What is the feeling like where it seems like you had an awakening or a beautiful spiritual experience, and now it feels like you've lost it? You had it and you lost it. There's a longing attached to that feeling of wanting to get that sensation back, wanting to get that feeling back. And that also can come with doubts about, what did I do wrong? Or what am I doing wrong? That I had this beautiful experience and now I lost it. And this can come after our first awakening, and it also is tied into what we call the honeymoon period. And the honeymoon period is that moment where we first get that awe-inspiring glimpse, experience of raw reality that's always been there, but it's unfiltered. And the system and our ability to experience this raw emotion, it's so full on, it's so real, it's so now, that it's all that there is at that moment. And for me, it felt like that scene in The Wizard of Oz where at the beginning of the movie, it's in black and white. And once the door is opened into Oz, everything is so colorful and so bright and so vivid, so alive. And there's a similarity to that during the first awakening where everything is so alive, everything is so now. Because it's that first opening of the door into Oz, and everything is just so vibrant and alive. As we start getting more comfortable, more settled into experiencing raw emotion, we then begin to integrate it into our day-to-day lives. That's when it's possible that the perception is that we have lost the awakening and now we're back into the matrix, because there's a phase where it seems like the relative and the absolute are very, very distinctly separate. And it's very polarizing, because we'll have these beautiful, deep, and peaceful spiritual experiences while we're meditating, or if we're on a retreat. And there's so much stillness and presence during those moments. And then we're jarred, into our daily lives with our families and work and children. And it just feels like we forget or we lose the awakening during those moments. However, the awakening is basically the raw experience of experience. So we don't lose it per se. We're experiencing it in a more raw way, in a fulsome way. And to continue with the imagery of the Wizard of Oz, there is an adjustment period when we first open the door that we're just in awe of the beauty and the colors and the experience of living in that raw, beautiful state. That newness, the new experience of that begins to settle. And now we're able to reside and live in that space. So now we are able to open up our capacity to feel and to experience reality, all of reality, not just that beautiful, glorious initial impression of pure, raw awareness. So when we don't filter out all of experience, that means that we're now going to experience all of life through the awakening process. And that will bring with things that traditionally are labeled unpleasant or bad, but they just are part of the kaleidoscope of experiences that we are having. So your relationship with how we label reality and how we label things as good or bad, that's a wonderful place to look. Because there isn't a losing of anything during the process. You're just now opening up your aperture to experience the presence of your true nature in every single aspect of your life and in every single interaction that you have with life. And we don't push back anymore. There's a couple of things that we can do to specifically target where the resistance is. So I would ask you to look inside the next time that you might be in a situation where you feel like the awakening is lost, or like you're fully in a mind identified state. You might be at work or driving out in public, and you just feel, I've lost it. I'm just so mind identified. So in that moment, if you're able to center yourself and feel into what's happening and touch into what is the resistance to that moment and that experience at that moment. So sometimes there could be an experience of fear where, what if I lost that awakening experience forever and I'll never get it back? So if you have that fear, let's look deeper into that. So what's the fear then? Okay, so the fear then would be, if I'll never have that means this is going to last forever, like that feeling of being in the matrix. All right, so what does that feel like? What does it feel like if this never changed? What would it feel like if things were never better, never worse, just the way that they are? What part of me is not accepting how things are right now in this direct moment? And if the pre-awakening experience was unpleasant, filled with negative experiences or negative feelings, it's understandable that there might be a hidden layer of fear, because if you were very, very unhappy and that dissatisfaction was the catalyst to seek and start your spiritual path, there might be a fear mechanism built into this where you don't want to go back anywhere near experiencing what you did before, because what if I get stuck back there again? But once you access reality and you experience it, you can't lose it again. If you go to a magic show and you've been watching this magician your whole life, if you get an opportunity to go behind the stage and you see how the trick is done, it's impossible for you to go back into the audience and ever trick yourself into believing how the trick was done. So once you see reality for what it is, you don't have to worry. You'll never be tricked into believing what's not real. But we can touch into and feel into that mechanism that makes it appear as though the absolute and the relative are separate. Like, where is that gap? And as we practice bringing our awareness between what appears to be those different states, so the meditative, calm state that we're in when we are in a retreat setting or when we're in a spiritual setting, versus how we might feel at work, with our children, or when we're driving. How is that awareness, how is that sense of presence different? And what inside is resisting presence when it's in a situation that's different than the meditative state? What is being resisted? What are the beliefs about that direct experience? What are the fears associated with that direct experience? These are all very, very good inquiries to look at. Not only intellectual inquiries, but really feel into the underlying fears about that discomfort in that situation. And once the system in the body is able to rest in a sense of acceptance, an equanimity that feels like to your core that this is how things are, and this is how things are. It's not a rejection. It's not I don't care what happens anymore. We can still have preferences. But what we don't have anymore is this strong attachment to the outcome. And when there isn't that attachment to the outcome, situations, feelings, experiences, they flow from one state to another. They move and they change and they flow. And there's a trust. There is a trust in the universe. There is a trust in the process. There is a trust. And we just flow with that moment to moment reality and experience of what is.